Guys who married Bridezillas, what happened after the wedding? Divorce after 2 years. She moved her stuff out while I was at work. I cried, and then when I got remarried to someone new, I realized what real love was. Also, my ex hit herself on 5 separate occasions when she was blackout drunk because she was an alcoholic. So I don't miss that either. My buddy married a Bridezilla. She was a Bridezilla long before the wedding, and they had dated for about 7 years. I have no idea how they are doing. I just kind of stopped talking to him a few years after she claimed I ruined his birthday by remaining sober. I had driven 5 hours to be at his birthday. My brother's fiance registered sign went off on my mom in front of me and my sister when he was 45 minutes late to the rehearsal due to his best man's car tire blowing out. Where is your asshole of a son? Dude should have never showed up for the wedding. Not only a Bridezilla, but a total utter sociopath. Her life was completely fabricated, and her parents, who didn't show up for the wedding, called my mom to tell her the truth about it the day after. She had a rap sheet a mile long and a prison record, but my brother, who just wanted to believe that people can change, stuck it out for 7 years. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Cheated whole time. Left for an alcoholic guy who had more money. My buddy married a Bridezilla. They are still together 10 years later. She posts on Instagram about their supposedly perfect marriage, but have been separated twice. I'm not sure how many of her friends know. He's an alcoholic now. Divorce or a sex? My sister was labeled a Bridezilla by the staff at her venue. I heard them. However, the chair coverings were red, supposed to be brown. There was no mirror in the bridal suite for her to get ready at. The photographer was late. The makeup artist was very late, hence the issue with the mirror. The buffet was totally wrong. Not a single dish she chose, and they charged $25 a person for what was to be a 4-tier chocolate fountain. It ended up being a small plastic contraption that she saw them unboxing from Walgreens the day of. It's a convenience store. On top of it all, the wait staff was 1 stroke to the number the contract stated, and the DJ refused to honor the playlist selected. So, yeah, she lost it at the venue. As someone who used to manage a men's warehouse, I can't wait for someone to start the thread about prom moms. The couple I knew, they spent tens of thousands on their wedding, and then a couple of years later she cheated on him with a much younger man. I married a Bridezilla. He is a lovely, sweet, thoughtful man, but boy did he lose it surrounding the wedding. I could have been married with about 3 special people there. He needed 200 plus. As far as I was concerned, we could eat off paper plates and napkins and have a big bonfire to burn them afterwards. He need personalized moist towelettes. You get the point. He is a lovely person and I love him dearly, but I will never marry him again. My cousin was married to one. He comes from a very not wealthy area and has become successful himself after moving out of his hometown. His wife was extremely wealthy, even could say excessively. They married after a year of knowing each other, and boy was it a surprise to hear about the wedding plans. They spent plus $250k on the wedding, including catering by 5-7 different restaurants. Their food was from different cultures and cooked in front of you, think almost hibachi buffet style. They even had servers in tailed suits and white gloves serving Taco Bell after midnight once everyone was drunk. Once they got married, she was spending more money than he could make. She was getting mad because he wasn't making enough, while she wasn't working and they hadn't had kids. They got divorced, and she gave him the ultimatum of getting his ring back or keeping the dog. He kept the dog. Her sister, a lawyer, helped her file a restraining order on him and they haven't spoken since. Duck her. But man did he dodge a bullet. Edit. I forgot to say they finished the divorce papers exactly 1 year and 1 day after their wedding. Edit 2. I never expected my first award would be the famous wholesome. Cheers. My sister was a Bridezilla. She announced a 2-year engagement and asked me to be more. Then I got the opportunity to move across the country to pursue my career. It was 18 months before her wedding and her reaction to the news was, "You're going to leave me here to plan my wedding all by myself?" Like I had signed away my right to have a life for the honor of being in her wedding. She made us all spend hundreds of dollars on specialized dresses. The bachelorette party had a dress code and a steep price tag. For 10 years before her engagement I had consistently had blue, green, purple hair, but knowing she is conservative I'll let the color grow out. I had natural color but a short bob with undercut that she went on about. In the lead up we talked every few days to discuss our wedding. It was the closest we'd ever been, and then as soon as she was married I got radio silence. And she even forgot my birthday. Needless to say we don't speak anymore, so I have no idea how her marriage is going. She left me 3 months later. After the wedding and vacation was over I told her we need to pay the debt we just accumulated. She said she didn't have much on her credit card and could pay it off in a couple of months if I picked up some of her bills. I agreed, and 3 months later she had her credit card paid off. She told me she wanted a divorce. We had a budget for the wedding and should have had no debt at the end, but in the last few weeks before the wedding she suddenly had to spend a ton of money on wedding that I had never even heard of before. And when I say she spent a ton of money, it came out of my pocket. Edit. I feel I should give a little more explanation about how I ended up with the wedding debt, since several people have asked why it wasn't split evenly and about annulment. We didn't have any kids and only had assets we brought into the relationship. By taking the debt I was able to prevent her from hiring a lawyer to represent her in the divorce, which would have forced me to do the same and cost significantly more than the debts. The debt in itself was about $8,000, which isn't a crippling amount but is still a lot of money to me. That was just the amount over budget on the wedding. She also had a car loan which I, thankfully, did not end up with. She comes from an upper middle class family and has a trust, which is not something I could have gone after in the divorce. I make nearly double in income of what she does. A lawyer would have advised her to claim alimony. She wouldn't have gotten a lot, but she would have gotten something. The judge asked her repeatedly if she wanted to claim alimony. Annulment is very uncommon where we live. We looked into it but did not meet the criteria for one. Instead we went to a quickie divorce lawyer who just puts paperwork together and then we had to do everything else. I luckily work with lawyers and was able to discuss things with them. None of them are divorce lawyers, but they gave me a general idea of how things would work out if it got ugly. Married for 7 years before I bailed. Best decision of my life. Got married again 5 years later to a girl that just wanted a justice of the peace wedding. Second best decision of my life. I'm a bride to be, and the way people are encouraging some Bridezilla behavior from me is something I never expected. I got incredibly lucky and found the exact wedding dress I wanted at Goodwill and my size with the tags on. And people are like, SHHH, don't tell people. Tell them you got it for $1,000. Brag about how much you got it for. Yeah, no. I'm more proud that I found it thrifting. Also, for brides on a budget, this is where I found mine. Lots of great affordable options. My GF of 10 years is very down to earth and level headed. We finally decided to get married later this year for a few reasons. And she's feeling a lot of phantom pressure to do things a certain way. It's not like there is an overbearing mom or catty friends applying pressure or expectations. It's just the whole idea is overwhelming and filled to the brim with opportunities to make a decision you might end up regretting later. Or further, I've taken a more active role in narrowing down options instead of asking her to pick a perfect solution out of 5 million possible options. It's helped somewhat, but there is still a lot of pressure on her, seemingly out of nowhere, to make a series of decisions that all depend upon the first few big decisions that are weighing heavily on her. All this to say, I can see how this kind of stuff could turn a normal woman into a lunatic. These types of events tend to bring latent family and friend drama to the forefront, and emotions are high before it even really gets started. My guess is that a lot of the Bridezillas were actually lovely people who calmed down and returned to being lovely people after the stress of the wedding stuff is removed. When I got married, I saw why women become Bridezillas. Lots of unsolicited advice, criticism, requests and stupid comments. When we sent out our invites, I included a line that said, "Do you have a request you think we should make? Click on this link to start." It was a link to PayPal for a donation. If you're gonna give us your unsolicited advice, you should join in on the funding. People got the message. Got into a huge fight about broccoli on the honeymoon. All my fault, of course. I knew then it was a mistake. Toughed it out for 2 more years of abuse before I left. So glad I did. My co-worker married a crazy Bridezilla. I'll try to just hit the bullet points of what happened leading up to, during, and after the wedding, but it's still a lot. 1. The moment he proposed she lost her sixth drive. According to him, she also basically stopped acting like the woman he fell in love with and started acting like her real self, which was batshit crazy. 2. A week after he proposed, she quit her job because her full-time job was now planning the wedding. The wedding was horrible. I'm getting there. 3. She had a fight with his mother because the bride demanded the groom's mom pay for half the wedding but get zero input and wasn't allowed to contribute to the guest list, which was 95% the bride's friends and family. 4. Brid, who was 30 years old, subsequently egged her future Mill's house. 5. When bride and groom had a spat about the egging, he went to the work the next day and she shaved her head and sent him video of her screaming and sobbing as she buzzed her hair off in the bathroom. I worked with him. He showed me the video when he said he had to leave, and I strongly urged him to have her assessed by a psychiatrist. He made a dumb joke about 60 with a crazy girl is the best kind and I pitied him. 6. Wedding was in a pool clubhouse in summer. It was much too small for the 150 plus people they invited. Someone forgot to turn the AC on until after the place was packed. A lifeguard showed up in a swimsuit to turn it on, but it did little given it was already sweltering. 7. 2 rows of chairs in the clubhouse were ribboned off with reserved signs on them, so no one sat in them. They were later occupied by the 6-seated bridesmaids, leaving about a dozen chairs open once the wedding started. The one groomsman stood by the groom and didn't sit. Elderly people were left standing or reduced to sitting on the floor as there was no way to get to the chairs once the ceremony started. 8. Bride showed up 90 minutes late, having been unhappy with her hair, wig, and makeup, so she took it all off and did it herself. So all the guests are standing for the 1.5 hours waiting for her. Groom was literally standing at the altar sweating his ass off in a wool suit in the South's high summer, and was clearly not sure if she would show up. He looked like he felt sick. 9. When bride showed up, she burst into the clubhouse, marched down the aisle and snapped at the officiant to hurry up and get started. 10. During the prayer while the religious groom had his head bowed, she turned to wave at everyone. I don't pray, so I was looking up. Then she told her mother to go get her some water. She drank a bottle of water during the prayer and kept grinning and waving at people in attendance, paying zero mind to her groom in front of her. 11. When the ceremony was over, tables were crammed into the clubhouse and apparently only family and immediate friends of the bride had seats at tables. The rest of us were going to be standing outside during the reception, so I didn't see a dance, a speech, the cake cut, nothing. 12. The food was served outside, in the southern US July heat with bugs everywhere. The bride made the groom go get her food over and over. He meekly stood in line with the other 150 people, until people insisted he go sit and let them get food. Nope. She told him to get food, so he said he had to be the one to get her food. 13. She never left her table, never greeted any of her guests. 14. Apparently they had a massive fight as they were leaving the following day for the honeymoon. Bride laying all the failures of the wedding she planned at him and his mom's feet. She threw his luggage out of the car and tried to drive to the airport by herself, but he had their tickets and jumped on the hood to stop her from driving off in his car. 15. He got fired about a month after the wedding because he kept showing up late, leaving early, and leaving in the middle of day, usually because she called him with some crisis. 16. 1 year after the wedding, I got a thank you note for my wedding gift, which was signed by just the bride with a note that said, "As you may have heard, Ryan and I have had bumpy starts in our first year as a married couple, and we're separated now. Thanks for the lovely gift." The divorced a couple months later. I knew I would have been a Bridezilla. I get extremely stressed about things and refuse to ask for help. My husband and I got married at the courthouse. Best decision ever. According to my mill, I'm the Bridezilla. We had a max limit of 36 people including ourselves and my son. My mill gave me a guest list which included, you guessed it, 36 names. She assured me that not everyone would come, but that they would be very appreciative of the invite. I felt gross by that and left the decision up to my husband since it was his family. Needless to say, they all got invites. I had asked for RSVPs to be given a few months before the wedding. Since the mill had used up all of the guest list, I had greatly reduced my side of the guest list to 4 people, with some on hold until I knew the exact numbers. I finally lost it 2 weeks before the wedding when I still didn't have RSVPs. She said she would work on it and get back to me. A week before the wedding she said one family also needs to bring 9 other people because they were going on a family trip and our town was on the way, so they would all be here anyway. I flat out said no and called her out on the BS. I cut off the guest list, said that I was inviting the rest of my guest list and that whoever hadn't RSVP'd didn't get a chair or plate. Right up to the day of the wedding they were making changes. We got married at a Chinese buffet so that it would be the simplest planning and everyone would have something that they like to eat. My dress was $40 off Amazon. My flowers were $20 from Costco. We had a Dairy Queen ice cream cake for the wedding cake. Yet she still makes it out that I was the Bridezilla. Been married 14 years. She's definitely a pain in the ass sometimes, but so is everyone else. I'm also pretty laid back, so a lot of decisions I leave to her because I just don't care. If it's a decision I do care about, I make the decision. Without her, I wouldn't have the 3 best kids on earth. She's an amazing mom and our kids have our best qualities. We have fun all the time. I think she was a Bridezilla not because she was a crazy person. It was more about making the moment right for everyone and making it a great memory. She had a relatively rough life with her parents and there weren't a ton of great memories. I noticed she goes way out of her way to make great memories for the kids. She's always planning stuff for us to do with them. I'm gonna keep her. Married a Groomzilla. We are talking costume changes between wedding and reception. Yelling at the wedding planner. Drag out all night fights about whether we can add fruit kebabs so people would maybe get enough to eat. All that. There was zero compromise. He made a lot of promises for things I had been wanting after the wedding and they never materialized. Like a beach vacation and such. Turns out, no compromise at the wedding meant no compromise anywhere else. So I left him after 4 years of marriage. Best decision ever. I have performed a few ceremonies that came about because things fell through for whatever reason. Only one of which I had to walk away from. I had received a call from my sil that one of her friends was supposed to get married and the priest had passed away the week before. They didn't want to change the date and move anything. So they had asked if she knew anyone who could help out. I said sure. When is the wedding? It was supposed to be in an hour. Okay. I was on my way home from work where I had finished up an important meeting. I miss meeting in person and was reasonably well dressed. So I called home to say I was going to be late. When I arrived, the happy couple had looked at me and asked if I had proper priest's vestments. No, I don't. And if I did, I would probably not be carrying them in my car. The bride had asked if I was able to go buy some and come back. I told her that I wouldn't begin to know where to buy something like that. The groom then told me that if I can't even try, then maybe I should leave. I did. My sil told me they cornered a priest at the church and told him he had to marry them or they would sue the church for a breach of contract and that it was the moral thing to do. They divorced 9 months later when her surprise baby was a different ethnicity than he was. Didn't help that he had a side piece as well. A bit of a change up, not a Bridezilla, but a Groomzilla. A friend of my father was remarrying. It was both his and the bride's second time around. Both in their early 40s. And an arranged marriage. Think Indian Orthodox Muslim stuff. The guy was an utter Groomzilla. He demanded that every event be at top-notch hotels with obscenely expensive catering and hired string quartets and whatnot for the entertainment. Mostly paid out of the bride's family's pocket. I might add. The parties on the nights leading up to the main wedding event were opportunity enough for him to make a rather public ass of himself, talking at the top of his voice and showboating the entire time. But the kicker came the next day, when the bride was missing from her own wedding's reception. Obviously it was very odd and conspicuous, and the few relatives from her side made some non-committal excuses about her not feeling well, etc. Turns out, this ducker had divorced the poor woman right after he'd had his wedding night fun. He said that he also didn't like her enough, and that's an almost literal quote. So he gave her the triple divorce thing, and that was it. The marriage was officially over before the festivities even ended. My uncle married one. She had a spending problem. Went clubbing in her 40s thinking she was 20. Acted like she was better than everyone. Couldn't keep friendships. And she cheated on my uncle with a man 10-15 years her junior. My uncle is remarried and happy. Edit. Sorry not to imply there's something wrong with going clubbing at all. More so that she'd abandoned her day-to-day priorities in order to focus on clubbing as a lifestyle, i.e. clubbing almost every single weekend, both Friday, Saturday, rather than finding time to spend time with kids at home, getting drunk and needing to sleep over friends' house who may not be comfortable with staying out that late, getting mad at said friends because they don't wanna go clubbing. The issue was less about liking clubs, but more about the obsession that many don't have. That's why I added acting like she's 20. If you're childless, have little responsibilities and have friends who enjoy that thing, go for it. But at 40ish, there's a bit of prioritizing and it starts to become difficult. First wife was a Bridezilla. During the honeymoon she realized she was married and the wedding day was history. She wanted the big wedding, which she had, not the marriage. The next 2 years were hell until she finally tapped out. I was young and stupid and the thought of divorce never crossed my mind. I don't know why it didn't. I guess I just assumed I'd be miserable the rest of my life. When she told me she was leaving, it felt as if the weight of the world was off of my shoulders. On a happy note, her parents were still paying off the wedding when we divorced. That's what happens when you allow your daughter everything she wanted out, including 2 wedding dresses. I didn't marry the Bridezilla, but I had coordinated her wedding. We had a death in the family, 6-month-old baby, a few days prior to the wedding. I called the bride and told her the situation, and said that my assistant would be stepping in for me so that I could attend the funeral. She told me to send my assistant to the funeral and that I had better be at her wedding. I told her I would be sending her a refund and that no one would be coming to her wedding. The groom ended up leaving her after this whole thing went down. Suffice to say, he really dodged a bullet there. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. My wife and I eloped a few months before our wedding and kept it mostly a secret. Then on the day of, we could just focus on having an awesome party for us and our friends. Our pastor cancelled the day of after standing us up for the rehearsal. My wife checked into the hotel the morning of and the lady asked, "Lady at counter, is there anything else I can help you with?" Wife jokingly, "Yes." Pastor, lack. "Our omelette chef is ordained." Lack, "Hey Tony, you busy tonight?" Tony, "No." Wife, "Okay." I think I was reverse Bridezilla. I've been married twice. First time around, had a medium-sized stressful church wedding. Parents probably spent $20k on the whole shindig. About 20 years ago, marriage lasted less than 5 years. Next time I got engaged, I was like, yeah, been there, done that on the whole big wedding thing. Kinda think it's a scam. Not interested in planning or paying for one of those ever again. My parents had already been tapped enough and I still felt bad that they'd had to shell out for a wedding when the marriage was over so quickly. I said we should go to the JP and maybe have a nice dinner at a restaurant. However, my husband was a little younger, had never been married, and his huge family was all excited over the idea of a big white wedding for their only boy. So he dug in his heels and said that he really wanted a wedding. And could we please come to a compromise? My compromise, which I did not expect him to take me up on, was that if he really wanted a wedding, he could plan and pay for it himself. He excitedly agreed. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that he did was as good as his word. I was 100% checked out of the entire wedding planning. Zero stress level. I was a few months pregnant and working, so this was very agreeable to me. I literally showed up when he told me. I did go buy a wedding dress from David's Bridal, pointed to the first reasonably priced, reasonably attractive gown I saw, tried it on, and was out the door with it in 15 minutes. Wedding day comes, and my husband-to-be has gone all out. His whole family had pitched in, and they had produced a band, a sit-down dinner, flowers, a cake, horse and carriage, photographer, everything. Considerably more fun than my first wedding, and less money spent overall. Never had so much fun in my whole life. Everything was a surprise because I legitimately had no idea what he'd arranged. My parents were so thrilled that they didn't have to pay for a big wedding again that they sent us on a pretty nice honeymoon instead. So I guess I married Groomzilla, but it was pretty awesome all around. No complaints. I was a Bridezilla. It was a small wedding, like 50 people. Was going to be at a park. Very casual. Everything was handmade or from the dollar store. I only ended up with a dress from a David's because my first little boho dress I ordered was more of a shirt. So my mom and friends took me dress shopping. My mom told the lady not to tell me any prices, but I told her under $200. I tried on one dress and cried because I loved it so much. My mom bought it, and I later looked it up and saw it was $3,000. So that changed everything. No more wedding at a park. So we booked a small venue. We served pizza and pies still, and the groomsmen were still wearing polos and shorts. Bridesmaids were still in some Rue 21 dresses I bought for them. I only became a Bridezilla the day of. None of my family I had invited showed up. So my husband's side was full and mine was empty. Even our friend sat on his side. Our MC read the speech I wrote before we were even at the altar. Our camera died so we didn't get the recording. I tripped going up to the altar. I had herniated a disc a week before the wedding. So I was miserable and in so much pain. I cried so hard afterwards. It felt like it was terrible. Like everything was ruined. I did my best to hold it together. But I was so relieved when it was over. If I could do it all over, I would change everything. Especially how I acted. None of that excuses my snippy behavior or my crying. Just because I was stressed and upset and hurting doesn't give me the right to make others feel bad. Edit. I really appreciate the reassurance, but I definitely wasn't nice to the people trying to help, and I'll always regret the way I acted. My mom was a mother of the Bridezilla. She's an alright lady generally, with her annoying habits here and there. Also, but damn. Woman cried because we refused to have a receiving line. We got married in our backyard. The reception was on the other side of the yard. Why the would we have a receiving line? She was beside herself for the better part of an entire year, worrying what we would do if it rained. We had a giant tent, ordered like 20 umbrellas. She also had a cow that the hem on her dress had gotten pulled loose by the ridiculous rhinestone stilettos she chose to wear to a wedding in a yard, on grass. I told my mom to get her some duct tape and my mother, again, cried her eyes out. To this day she complains about the fabric runner we used for the aisle because her heels dug into it, saying how silly of a choice that was. Everyone in the wedding party was aware of it, and wore wedges or flats, but she snorted that that wasn't elegant. She loathed that I wore ballet flats. She was also appalled that for our rehearsal dinner, which was at our home, since that's where our wedding was, consisted of takeout from our favorite local pizza and sandwich place, and the rehearsal itself was all of 10 minutes. She decried it for being borderline trashy. Thankfully, following the ceremony, my brother gave her a joint and all was well and happy for the party thereafter. I know this is not what you are asking, but my friend married a groomzilla. It was seriously nuts to watch. It could have easily wrecked all her friendships. He was so bossy and had zero sense of how crazy he was acting. They are fine and he is back to normal, but I think it highlighted his controlling tendencies. Not a Bridezilla, but a Milezilla. Wife wanted a regular sized wedding. Nothing fancy. At a historic venue she loved. We had planned for about 100 guests at most, and we would do a lot of the work. Mil started to pressure about having to invite tons of people. In-laws are loaded and social butterflies. Change the venue. Change the photographer. etc. I didn't give a rid since it was all to make my wife happy, and did my best to adjust. Finally, one day about 2 months before the wedding, my wife had a breakdown crying because of all the changes and bullet from Mil. Told wife I would handle Mil from now on. Called Mil and read her the riot act and told her to cool her it or we would just get a courtroom wedding and forget about the religious wedding. Huge deal to the family. She fought me for weeks. Phil fought me. Bills fought me. Told them all to pound sand. We had our original wedding. I was folding invitations and favors the night before until 3 AM. But by duck we got it done. Of course. Mil still changed the DJ and photographers without me noticing. So we had completely wrong music. And we have yet to see the pictures. 16 years later, and we have minimal contact with the family.